What is up guys, Deadset here. Yesterday I took a little break off farming for the new items in the PTR to try out the second most popular Crusader spec in competitive rifting. Of course I'm talking about the Holy Shotgun Crusader. Check out my impressions on how it did in greater rifts. The build that I used was mostly a stock Holy Shotgun like the one I made a guide for. However, with respect to the survivability that is needed in rift levels above 26, which is roughly where Torment 6 ends and Torment 7 and above begin, I made two changes. Knowing the damage that is coming my way in the later rift levels, I replaced the utility of the Embodiment of Power rune of Akarat's champion with the survivability-oriented Prophet rune. To offset some of the wrath issues that inevitably arise with a tankier setup, I replaced the Divine Verdict rune of Shield Glare and gave Zealous Glare a chance. If you haven't paid attention to this rune before, it restores a very decent 9 wrath for each blinded enemy. However, after I evaluated it in this rift run, I don't think I'll be including it in future attempts. It's a good rune overall, but my wrath issues do not arise in bigger fights where Zealous Glare shines, but in single target combat where 9 wrath is simply not enough and the skill goes to waste. Prophet, on the other hand, performed just as well as it was expected to. It's an excellent survival tool that made me capable of surviving the elite affixes that basically one-shot me during my Firestarter attempt. Coupled with some defensive pieces on your gear, Prophet ensures that you will rarely dip below 50% of your HP, and if you do, you have a second life to rely on. The fact that you can effectively die and not reset your progress to the last checkpoint is a huge boon when doing competitive rifting. The tankiness comes with a price, however. I will go over this when I talk about the playstyle of the build, but Prophet is not the ultimate choice that I thought it would be when I was trying out Firestarter yesterday, and the stock Holy Shotgun from the live servers simply is not going to be the ubiquitous Crusader spec to dominate the greater rifts. Survivability plays an important role, but it was smaller than I initially anticipated when I was doing my first attempt with the Firestarter build. Additional game-changing items like a well-rolled Hellfire Amulet are going to be needed in order to progress all of the Crusader builds past their current limits, but with the proper Hellfire in mind, it might just turn out that the Firestarter is the better choice when you're soloing with the Crusader in greater rifts. As a final note about the build and gear, I did swap out my belt as I intended. I replaced my Harrington Waistguard, which is useless in greater rifts since there are no containers to click on. Unfortunately, not with Vigilante belt as I hoped to test out having a cooldown reduction belt, but with a good old String of Years that I had stashed away. The String of Years is an extremely tanky choice with a unique property that reduces the damage that you take from melee attacks by close to 30%. I was actually pleasantly surprised by the inclusion of this piece in my gear. It felt impactful on my overall survivability, and I'm looking forward to trying it out on other, squishier builds to push them further in the greater rift difficulties. If you're feeling fragile in the upper greater rift levels, I definitely recommend giving the String of Years a chance, since it takes a single slot that you will have to replace anyway, and it doesn't get in the way of other set pieces, and you don't have to make changes to the ring slots to include a Ring of Royal Grandeur, which is something I had to do if I was going to try a Captain Crimson 2-piece, for example. As far as playstyle is concerned, if you have played with the Holy Shotgun in a party before, you are well aware of what swapping out Embodiment of Power for Prophet does to the way you play. You have to be more mindful of your wrath spending, place your shotgun shots more carefully, and against single targets you will have situations with downtime, which due to the nature of greater rifts and having a timer is kind of detrimental. Using Prophet is not breaking the build by any means, but it does make it a bit more cumbersome, especially if you can't kill your target within 1 or 2 discharges of your Wrath reserve, which is definitely the case in Greater Rifts at about a Torment 7 difficulty. Also, you'll be quickly reminded why Holy Shotgun is preferred for group play, where you have the benefits of a pool monk clumping up the monsters together for massive damage from your shotgun shots. You've probably noticed the short cone of Fires of Heaven demands favorable positioning of both yourself and the monsters to get the most out of it. When you solo in Torment 6 Rifts on live servers, you see hints of this issue, but in harder, Greater Rifts, the problem is exacerbated to a point where I find it more beneficial to simply skip elites that are extra health or are of a variety that is prone to running away. This is something I didn't have to do with Firestarter, where the Fist of Heaven's placement is much easier and forgiving, and the damage over time keeps sticking regardless of where the monster moved. It has been mentioned before and isn't particularly tied to the Holy Shotgun build, but Rift density is something that needs to be looked at. I did share my thoughts yesterday that it might be a design choice to entice you to include movement skills in your selection. I'm still not completely against lower population rifts, but I would honestly prefer that if they stay, they remain in the earlier Greater Rifts up to Torment 6 difficulty. In later Rift levels, the sparse density coupled with the enormous health scaling of mobs can turn some levels into flights of desperation looking for the door to the next zone. I'm not opposed to having Steed Charge as a mainstay in my build and playstyle, but sometimes RNG makes it so that even a mobility skill is not enough. Speaking of health scaling, I would just like to make a final point. I'm really hoping the idea of increasing difficulty moves past the strict numbers growth, because at a certain point this leads to very awkward gameplay and enforces the furnace on any player that hopes to make good progression. Having increasing elite density, increasing affix numbers, possibly even additional bosses thrown at you in the middle or at the end of a level will make the challenge imposed by the Greater Rifts much more enjoyable. This is very apparent and I'm certain Blizzard are looking into it, but it's worth putting out there that the current situation is not ideal. Well, this is it for me and my evaluation of the Holy Shotgun Crusader. Even though it was not my best experience, it was well worth trying it out. If you liked what you saw, I would appreciate your subscription to my channel. Keep in touch with the Twitter and Facebook that I linked below. I leave you with a couple of more minutes of Greater Rift level 29, which was the last one I completed within the time frame. Enjoy, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.